Well, hello. Happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday.
And welcome to the back catalog listening party. My name is Mother Banjo, one of your hosts.
My name is Anthony Ihrig, the other host.
And today we have joining us from Western Massachusetts, Kris Delmhorst.
Hi.
And and
Fancy.
and special bonus guest, Julie Wolf, joining us from California.
Yay.
All right. And we are so happy to have you all here. Folks joining the party early today. People are ready for happy hour, that's
Yes,
for sure.
look at that. Everybody, happy Friday, says Alan. I'm with you, Alan.
And TGIF, Connie says hello from Richfield.
Connie.
Thomas from Cookeville, Tennessee. Connecticut, and Chris enjoying in Utapils here in the Twin Cities. And yeah, it's a beautiful day, 80 degrees here in Minneapolis. And Katie Dahl, past back catalog guest, joining us from Northeast Wisconsin. And we're so happy to have you all here. If you're new to this show, this is the show where we invite different guest artists to revisit old records with us. And we listen to tracks together, talk about the songs, and answer your questions. So feel free to join in the party. Tell us where you're tuned in from. And it's Friday. So maybe you're enjoying a special beverage or snack or whatever. I am enjoying, it just says beer. But
Okay.
but it's an Irish red. It's from the Backcountry Winery and Brewery in I bought it in Boone, Wisconsin, and it's delicious. I was down there last week and enjoying the scenic railroad down there with my family, and picked up this beer, as it says on the can. So Tony, what are you enjoying on your
Well,
Friday?
it is officially over 80 degrees here in the Twin Cities, so I'm back to my favorite Hefeweizen, the Paulaner from Munich, Germany.
Nice. And Chris, are you enjoying anything?
Professionals. Yes, it's so hot here that I made a thing that I never have, which is a little whiskey and a lot soda.
Nice.
Excellent. Yes.
Oh yeah,
It's like a cocktail. It's the closest I get to a cocktail.
Cheers.
I love
Excellent.
it.
Cheers.
I love the jar, too.
And Julie, you're joining us from California.
I am.
What are you having over there?
I'm having a never fail Sierra Nevada hazy.
Nice.
That's a San Francisco thing.
Strong choice.
Yes, exactly. Well, tell us if you're enjoying a drink or a snack and where you're tuned in from. And we're happy to have you all here. Ice-free shores of Lake Erie. It's true. And we have another Western Mass person. And Heather Miller from Austin, Texas. So great to have you all joining us. And we are just so excited because Kris Delmhorst has been an artist we've been wanting to have on the show for quite a while, and it finally worked out to have her on. And then she picked the record, and she was like, I think I want to invite Julie Wolf to join me too, who appears on the record. So we're excited to have both of them joining us. And yeah, I can't wait to dig into the record. But before we do, Kris, for folks who maybe aren't as familiar with your music, maybe you could give the brief, 2-minute origin story of like where you grew up and how you fell into making music and maybe what led up to this specific record.
Yes. Well, I grew up in New York City, in Brooklyn, and played mostly classical cello and piano growing up. And I kind of made a last minute shift away from that kind of music when I went to college. I was planning on going to conservatory, and I bailed right at the last second in what my mom calls my pre-life crisis. I decided that classical music was not my world, which I had sort of known for a while. And so I wandered around. I did some other things. I worked on farms. I worked on boats. I taught environmental ed. And then in my 20s, I started writing songs, which songs had always been the focus of my life. But it just hadn't occurred to me until then that I could write them myself. It just didn't. The focus of my life.
Hey.
Yeah. And just in terms of that, I was obsessed with them. And I would, write down the lyrics of everything. And, I spent all my money at Tower Records. I was completely obsessed with songs. So the fact that it didn't occur to me to just write one until I was 25 or so is funny. But so I started writing songs, and I ended up by happenstance just following a boyfriend. I moved to Boston and fell into the open mic scene right there just as I was starting to write, which was an incredible stroke of luck for me. And so I sort of grew up as a songwriter in that community, in the Boston and Cambridge community. And this record was the second one that I made with Billy Conway, who produced these records and played drums as well. And he was the drummer in Morphine and Treat Her Right, and a super influential person for me at that time when I was really just figuring it out. When we made this record, it came out in August of 2003, so that's 20 years ago, which is upsetting to realize. So we made it in 2002 and 3, and so I hadn't really been at it for very long. I really didn't still know what I was doing. There's so much to it, especially recording, making an album, all that stuff. There's so many skills to learn. So I was just like in deep study of all those skills. Not that I'm not now, but like I was on a very steep part of the learning curve with all that stuff right then. And so Billy was a real teacher for me at that time. And we recorded this as well as the other one we made together, which is called 5 Stories. We recorded them at a loft called High and Dry, which had belonged to Mark Sandman, the frontman of Morphine. And Mark passed away in, I guess it was 2000 or 99, I can't remember now. And so after his death, the surviving members, Dana and Billy, started to make a lot of other people's music in that space, and turned it into a really, really one of a kind, truly magic studio space to make music in. And so that's where we made this one. I can't even remember what I'm supposed to be talking about.
That is exactly what we want to
Okay.
know.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, I'm just curious, since you told this kind of, you had this change of, from kind of classical to folk. Was there a specific artist that just captured you and like really brought you over that threshold into folk music? Or was it just a scene or multiple artists that did that?
I think the people I can really point to were, because I was listening to, growing up as a teenager, and even like a middle schooler or a high schooler, I was listening to lots of top 40 pop, lots of like classic rock, lots of alternative, as they called it at the time, lots of jazz, all kinds of stuff. I was just sort of voracious. But although I certainly had absorbed, Joni Mitchell and people like that, it wasn't until there was the moment of like Tracy Chapman and Suzanne Vega and then Ani a little bit later, who Julie has spent years of her life on the road with. And like hearing those somehow, I mean, it's almost kind of embarrassing that you need to hear someone that resembles, to hear a woman delivering a song on an acoustic guitar without much else going on, and to have that be enough, I guess, was sort of a revelation to me, because that hadn't been much of what I had heard up until that point. So I guess something somehow just clicked. Also, I moved when I quit classical music, I went to college and sort of did some tangents and studied art and did some other things. And then when I graduated, I was living very rurally in Maine, working on a farm and living in a little cabin with no electricity and hand pumped water. And so I was pretty isolated, especially in the wintertime, and there was not a lot to do, and there wasn't, it was kind of like the very most primal reasons that people make music was just like to keep myself from going crazy. So that's when I first picked up the fiddle, and I played a lot of trad music on fiddle for a few years there. And during that time was when I started first learning songs on a little guitar, just kind of to make the long nights go by, and then started eventually writing them myself.
Thanks for sharing that.
That's wonderful. And it's funny you talk about making music to keep yourself from going crazy, because that was the genesis of this show, which was started in 2020 when we were all stuck at home and we missed our artists and music loving friends. So we're happy to have you here, even when you could be doing other things. So we're going to dig into some tracks because folks are here for the music and excited. So the first track that you picked from this record, Songs for a Hurricane, is the first track, Waiting Under the Waves. Is there anything you want to say about the song before we all take a listen?
I'm interested. I haven't heard the whole thing of any of these songs through in a number of years. probably
Excellent.
a double digits number. So I kind of flipped through to pick some songs, and these guys can vouch that I had a very difficult time picking the songs because it's not my strong suit. But so this one, I don't know. This one I'll still play sometimes. I kind of like the shape of the song because the chorus, everything's pretty big and the chorus is pretty small, and that's kind of an interesting thing to play with. There's also some interesting stuff at the end where we were kind of doodling vocally, which I didn't even remember that existed. It's just like a moody track. It's pretty interesting to me when I hear it right now. We sound a little bit like the record player sped up a little bit. It's a little fast, but I guess this is just how it is. It's how we were feeling it at the time. So.
All right. Well, let's give it a spin. This is Kris Delmhorst, Waiting Under the Waves, here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
I'm losing my faith again, losing my open hand, losing my how and why, losing my great divide. And in this world where we are, who can say what's going too far? You punch out the windows, baby, I slash all the tires. I'm feeling that undertow, like maybe it's time to go. It's getting so sick and thin, getting right under my skin. And in this song that we sing, who could ever point to one thing? You are still in hiding, baby, I am still on fire, waiting under the waves, waiting under the waves, waiting under the waves to be saved. And I am sorry that we're sinking, but we're sinking just the same. Losing my faith in you, losing my balance too. How does it get so wrong? How does it all take so long? In this time that we live, who could find a way to give a damn if we are drowning in two separate stormy seas, waiting under the waves, waiting under the waves, waiting under the waves to be saved. And I am sorry that we're sinking, but we're sinking just the same. And darling, don't you ever wonder if we two could both slip under, learn to sink and learn to swim and breathe again and breathe again. All these tears that we cry, who can say if we will live or die, stand or fall, live in love or not at all, waiting under the waves, waiting under the waves, waiting under the waves, waiting under the waves, waiting under the
All right, waiting for that fade out. Waiting Under the Waves by Kris Delmhorst from her 2003 release, Songs for a Hurricane, which we are revisiting today on the Back Catalog Listening Party with Kris Delmhorst joining us and Julie Wolfe, who plays on the record. And all of you out there listening, and folks really, a couple people saying that was their favorite track off the record.
That's probably about, 3 or 4.
See, that's good. We played it. That sounded like just the right speed that time when we were
It
listening.
sounded perfect to me. And, you had mentioned the vocals at the end of the track. And I'd love to know who else was. Julie, was that you also joining in on that track, or is that just many Chris's?
Yeah, there were definitely multiple Chris's, but yeah, I was singing on that too, right?
Yeah, when I first heard it a couple days ago, I had to really like listen hard and think about it. And that's one of the things I love about you as a singer, Jew, is that you're like so inside my voice that I could almost not tell if it was you or me. Yeah, it's super beautiful. But yeah, I think you're singing the main harmony on the choruses. Yeah. And then I don't know, I had actually completely forgotten about that sort of interlocking line on the bridge, which has its own lyrics, right? Which I think were sort of a little grab from a song of Meg Hutchinson's that I really liked at the time. And so I don't even know who was singing that one.
Well, I was looking, I actually have the liner notes to this album in front of me, and I'm kind of glad I did, only because there's a lot of players on this record, but also a lot of the players are playing multiple instruments, including the two of you. So like Kris, it says you're singing, and playing acoustic and electric and baritone guitars, also fiddle and cello. And Julie, you're listed as piano, organ, Wurlitzer, accordion, melodica, and xylophone and vocals. So maybe, I don't know if you can remember, what were you playing on that track, Julie?
Definitely Wurlitzer.
Whirly.
Yeah, that was lovely.
That was yeah. And when Kris and I would tour, I always wanted to play that song. That was
there she is, getting ready to play that song.
Yeah.
Excellent. So yeah, how did you two meet?
When did we meet? Was it on that tour with Ihrig?
Maybe.
That was an early one.
Go.
Do you think? And we were singing Edelweiss.
Oh my God.
As an encore, do you remember?
Yes.
We were, I think.
What year?
Well, that's one thing. That was an early tour anyway. The early thing we did together was you were playing with Aaron McKeown, who is my neighbor now, like 8 miles that way. And I was, I guess, opening up and then singing with you guys a little bit. And Neil Cleary was playing drums. Neil was playing drums. So you guys were playing trio. And I don't know if that was the first time that we met per se, because I think I already knew your sister Kate, maybe, but maybe I didn't. I don't know, Julie, because it was so...
I just feel like I've always known you.
I feel like that
too. Nice.
Well, and then was this the first record you two made together?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's a beautiful pairing, and there's, again, a lot of personnel on this record. And you mentioned Billy Conway, who produced it and also plays on it. I don't know, do you want to talk about any of the other folks who play on the record?
Yeah. The record, there's Billy in the hat. Well, they both have hat. This is Billy in the front. And that at the board is Paul Q. Coldery, who engineered this record and mixed it. And he worked with a lot of bands you might have heard of, like Radiohead. And, he's like a big time pro. But he and Billy had a band together in college called Chicken Lickin' and the Pot Pies. And they're tight. So that you can see a little bit of the studio is a big open brick space with these big wooden beams, and then just a ton of windows on 3 sides. And it was a very there's Andrew, I'll talk about him in a second. It was a very, that's another, you can see the space. It's not a traditional studio space. It's not very controlled environment, let's say that. And so it was funny to bring Paul in, who can do anything, but was kind of used to rolling in a slightly more professional situation at that point. And but he went with it. This is Andrew Mazzoni, who played bass, not that tiny guitar. And he had played, Billy and I had made 5 Stories together. And although there's a lot of people on this record, there were a lot of people on that one, like a lot. And a lot of instruments, although I had banned electric guitar from 5 Stories. And so I was thinking, listening to that song, we just heard that was kind of definitely introducing, like, this is a different, there's going to be electric guitar. And there's Jay Beyer. So the way that this record worked was the core live tracking band was Billy on drums, Andrew on bass, me on whatever I was playing, and Julie on whatever she was playing. So the 4 of us made all the tracks live in the studio. And then we added the guitar guys afterwards. I actually just saw my calendar from that year, and we just had, I guess, 4 studio days in a row with a different guitar player each day, and they just came in and played on whatever they were going to play on. So, and those guys were Kevin Barry, who I still play with all the time, and Jay Beyer, who I've had a million musical projects with, and Mark Relli, who ditto and came on the road with me for years, and Steve Mayone, who also did a bunch of tours with me at that time, who was a Boston guy, now in New York. And they all have a different personality as a player, so I guess that's sort of that was our little palette that we were painting with on the songs. And I think that's mostly it. Dana Collier came in and sang on something just because he was like passing by and we grabbed him. And I think that's it. So that's a pretty reasonably concise little group of players. And so Julie and I had played, certainly I know on that tour with Aaron was a time. I'm not sure if you had played on my music before that, before Hurricane.
I hadn't, not
I didn't
on the
think
record.
so.
No.
So I just, it's the same way that I got together with Billy. I just, happened to have this musical interaction with Julie, and I just wanted her in my music so much. So we flew her out, and I don't know what we tracked for, a week or 5 days, not a week.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so Julie's on everything, but plays all the keyboard things that there are to be played.
Excellent.
Awesome. I just want to back up for a second. You had mentioned banning the electric guitar on the other record. So I was just curious about kind of your producer role with something like this. Did you have, like, as you were putting this record together, the collection of songs, the musicians that were a part of it, did you have any kind of scope in mind? Did you have like I want this record to be like this, or I want it to not be like that? Was there anything like that governing this run?
Yeah, I don't remember if we were aiming for I want to be like this record. That's not usually the way I approach things, but especially because Billy and I had already made that first one, and that was his first time accepting at all the title of producer, and he still made them both be co-producing, which was pretty bogus because I didn't know what I was doing, but he wasn't comfortable. So during the first one, which we worked on over the course of months and months, 5 stories, we just kept saying, next time we're going to do this, next time we're going to do this, next time we're going to do this. So it was kind of like a lot of the next times. And so we definitely wanted a more concise cast of characters. And for me, it was the first time that when you first go into the studio, it's a lot. There's just so many things to think about all at once, and they're different things from playing live or writing. And so the first couple, I was kind of just trying to stay on the horse, but then this one, I felt like I had enough sense of how the whole thing worked that I could think about the project as a whole a little bit. So I definitely, even from the writing and the choosing of the songs for this one, I had in mind kind of an arc of the whole record. It's not a narrative record, but it's certainly like sort of showing the arc of something from like point A to point B. And so, yeah, I think there was just a little bit more brain space that was freed up from like panic that was just available to be like, okay, what are we actually trying to do here? And that was really satisfying. Like I was aware of that while it was happening, and I was like, whoa, we're making a record here, It's nice.
Well, CJ Curtis, which I don't know if that's Katie Curtis, I'm guessing it might be, says 5 Stories is such a fine record itself, my favorite Katie record of all time, although I adore and have them all. And I should mention that 5 Stories was a close second as to which album we were going to feature today. Kris was on the fence as to which record. But I will say, if you want to get a copy of 5 Stories and the record we're talking about today, Songs for a Hurricane, you can always go to Kris's website, KrisDelmhorst.com, and you can check out all the musics there.
Physical copy is still available of this one.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's like a rare thing now.
These ones still have, I just had to open one up to read the liner notes. They still have the super annoying sticky strip on the top.
Yeah.
That's some vintage stuff right there.
I was going to say, that is vintage indeed, of an era of Borders and Tower Records and all
it
those
sounds really, really good. So we know that what we're hearing is closer to the uncompressed version of it. So if you want to hear it in all its fidelity, I second what Ellen said. Hop on over to her website and pick up a copy of this one and all the other ones while you're there. And you'll not only have a great piece of art and all the liner notes, but you're going to have the high-res version.
Exactly.
These records we recorded on onto ADAT, which was sort of like a brief little chapter in the saga of transitioning from analog to digital recording. So we were recording them all on a bunch. We had a few different ADAT machines that were kind of, paired. And then we would dump all those tracks. Once we had the tracks, then we would dump them onto tape, onto 1-inch. And then I think we actually overdubbed onto the tape, and we definitely mixed from that tape to other tape. So it was kind of a hybrid digital analog thing.
And I like Julie's nod over there. So if folks don't know, Julie's not only a fantastic musician, but she's also a fantastic producer. And I don't know. So she's, of course, appreciating all these little studio tidbits. And I have to ask Julie, at the time you recorded on Kris's record, were you also producing other people's projects, or were you kind of more doing the studio and touring musician thing?
I was more doing the studio and touring musician thing for sure. And
so you were learning all this stuff as you were going into this.
Yeah, I mean, I had already played on many, many, many records, and I was what you would call a career side player. So people would hire me to play in their bands and go on tour with them and make records with them, and in the process of doing that for so many years, I developed a curiosity about producing, and I also developed, I think, a set of skills about serving the song and being tuned into the songwriter and figuring out what they needed that transferred really well into producing. And so I wasn't full-time producing then. I was producing little bits here and there. And then later on really transitioned into more producing.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, it's so fun to have you both here today to talk about this recording, getting the inner workings of this album, Songs for a Hurricane. But we need to hear more music because folks are here for the music. And this next track that you picked, Kris, is You're No Train. Is there anything you want to say about it before we dive in?
Well, this one, this is one of the ones that I think Kevin Barry played guitar on, but Julie's playing piano on this. And I don't know if you played other stuff, but definitely piano. And we've played this one since live a million times. And of all the songs in the world, this one is the most Julie-centric to me. And that's like my favorite way to play the song always is with Julie Wall.
Awesome. So. Let's give it a listen. This is Kris Delmhorst, You're No Train, here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Well, a train blows a whistle before it pulls away. Oh, but no word or warning do you say? One minute right beside me, another you're 1,000 miles away. Well, I felt such a shaking, and I heard such a word. Fast enough to blur. And I opened up my eyes and found we were right back where we were. train, you're the track, always running away and running back. Baby, you're no train, you're the steam blowing by. Well, how I long for the journey, those far distant lands. I believed all your promises and plans. Now I'm standing at the station, a lonely ticket in my hand. Baby, you're no train, you're the track, always running away, always running back. Baby, you're no train, you're the silence behind. So roll on, roll on, roll on,
All right. Kris Delmhorst with You're No Train from her 2003 album Songs for Hurricane, which we are revisiting today on the back catalog listening party with Kris Delmhorst and Julie Wolfe, who plays on the record and on that track. And I just love all the space in that song and the time you let it have. It's just
It's very patient.
yeah.
Yeah, what I really hear is like a room full of people like Julie, Billy, and Andrew, and Mark. It was Mark. I was wrong. It was Mark playing guitar on that. Who can all like shred and play anything they want to, and they're playing almost nothing. Like almost nobody is playing. You know, the Billy on the drums is just like hitting a little something every now and then, and like that restraint. When Julie was talking about serving the song, like that's what that is.
Yeah.
But it's hard, you know, like there's definitely, those are always the kind of players that I've always wanted to play with, is people whose ego or whatever is not keeping them from playing nothing if that's what's going to serve the song. And it's not nothing. It's like the beautiful, perfect little something.
There's
Yeah.
the space in there that really was so moving.
Yeah. And especially because I don't think I do want to point out that we did finally check off Train off the folk bingo card.
Good, excellent.
Yeah, so that's important. We're not going to revoke your credentials as a folk singer because you have the Train song.
Thank God. It's too late for me to do anything else, so I'm glad to hear it.
But I will say that usually that's not what you think of when you think of a Train song. You think of something really like a lot of movement and something chugging along, and this is just like. It has just such a quiet feel, which is so beautiful. And Joe commented, this fade out for me surely has the feel of a Julie Wolfe arrangement. In other words, really great. And he said, I first became aware of Julie's amazing accomplishments when Deirdre McCalla was on the back catalog listening party. So
thank you.
Yes. And then speaking of production, Joni had a question actually for Julie about that. She was interested in Julie's thoughts about how to expand production from the very male-dominated world it is now. Read some really disturbingly low numbers recently. I don't know if you have the answer to that, but do you have any thoughts on that subject, Julie?
How to expand it? Just get your hands on some knobs and get your ears open and just dive in. And I don't mean that in a glib way. It's true. There, women. And trans women and trans men are really underrepresented in the recording industry on this side of the glass, which means as engineers or producers. So I don't really have an answer except to not only dive in yourself as much as you can, but just send up flares to, like if somebody, I hope I'm not screwing myself, but if somebody sent up a flare to me and said, hey, what can we converge and have some kind of conversation about, like that's what we need to do. We need to gather. We need to gather and share information. I do that with my community, men and women, but especially I feel very like when I do clinics, like music producing clinics, I'm very interested in helping to educate women and girls in this realm. So I don't know if that answers your question, but just sending flares up and finding community.
Yep. I think I feel optimistic that it's something that's starting to change. I feel like even just compared to when we were making this record, when I could have counted the women producers, engineers that I knew of on probably literally one hand. And I think that there's a barrier that has existed where there can be a feeling like there's some secret knowledge you don't have or you don't have access to. Like there's just been like and that's one of those things that like can tip pretty quickly, I think, over the course of like a generation, because now there are so many more women visibly working in these fields. And that's sometimes all you need to know. Like what I was saying before, where like you hear somebody playing an acoustic guitar song and you're like, oh, duh, I can do that. I know how to do that. And so, and there's also a lot of really great organizations like Women's Audio Mission and a lot of
That's right.
that are actively trying to sort of educate and empower women towards music production work. So I do feel like there's a lot of great stuff happening.
I think that's true. And also the large format studio culture is not the predominant thing.
Absolutely.
In music making, unless you're on a really major label planet, so you can kind of pull your shekels together and make a very modest recording situation in your own home, or or there are smaller studios, really kind of independent studios. So with the old large format studio culture, that was definitely a male scene. And not only that, but your way in was so it really hardcore, doing so much coffee grabbing and cables and that's real, and that's like my hat tips to every engineer that I've ever met who did that, because it's a
Absolutely.
journeyman thing, you know.
Yeah.
And things are easier. It's easier to get your hands on some, like I said, modest recording equipment where you can just make sounds, just start making
tinker.
sounds and
That's how you
tinker.
learn stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's so great to have you both on the show talking about sort of the ins and outs of making the record. And we have a bunch of questions we have to get to. Someone was wondering what the story was behind the title, Songs for a Hurricane. And there does seem to be a theme, which you kind of alluded to earlier.
Yes, I mean, it's definitely sort of a breakup album, and there's a lot of weather imagery the whole time, and so I was kind of taking the whole kind of prism of ending a relationship, and the way that, like, just the kaleidoscope of little mini micro emotional climates that happened during that thing, and trying to just kind of tie the songs loosely into some kind of shape of like a hurricane. Like it sort of comes on, and then there's this still eye in the middle, and then it recedes, and things are different afterwards. And so that was, my concept.
Okay. Excellent. Wonderful. And we're going to get to a couple more songs here. Have no fear, folks. But one other question we had, and a couple people were interested in the answer to this, was, will there ever be more Redbird?
Redbird!
Which is a trio that Kris was in with Jeffrey Foucault and Peter Mulvey, who also was a past guest on Back Catalog.
Yes. It was actually a 4-person trio with me and Mulvey and Jeffrey and David Goody Goodrich. That was our format. I think the answer to, is there going to be more Redbird, is probably Redbird will like have a moment again, but we don't know when. So right now that's not on the table. People have babies, people have teenagers, people have a lot of projects, people live scattered all over the country. So it's like, it's on the back burner, but it's still on the stove.
So keep your eyes out for a potential Redbird sighting.
I mean, don't lose sleep keeping your eyes out, is what I'm saying, but keep your eyes casually out.
Well, one way you can keep track of that is, of course, by sign up for Kris's email list, or following her on the social places, and you will certainly find out about that. And Kris also has a Patreon as well. So if you really want the inner scoop, I don't know, is there anything especially you want to mention that's coming up on the Patreon?
Patreon is, for me, it's very process oriented. It's really to do with the practices of being a kind of a lifer songwriter. So there's not a lot of like unreleased tracks or like, here's this old live stuff. It's kind of forward looking, and I share little demos of songs, which can be all over the map, like goofy ones, random ones, just whatever. And I learn a cover for them every month and share a video of that. And then sometimes I'll write little essays about different pieces of the process or the life.
Yeah. Well, that sounds exactly like what Back Catalog listening party goers would be interested in, because that's what we're all about
coming together.
Exactly, because this is exactly what we do. Is we like to invite artists to revisit old records and talk about the songs and the process. So, which is why it's so wonderful to have Julie joining us, as well as Kris today, talking about the making of the record. And Dennis just chimed in to say, on our Patreon, you get to hear a lot of stuff that you won't hear anywhere else. And Matt the electrician, another past guest, says, I'm a big Delmhorst Patreon fan. So
I got you, baby.
You can check that out. But we're going to get more music, because I want more music. The next track that you picked to feature today from this album is Bobby Lee. Is there anything you want to say about this?
This one, this is a long story. It's somebody it comes from a conversation about Easter, and which is seasonally appropriate. And I was talking to someone who was a priest, and they were talking about how everybody loves to be like, Easter, yeah, like rebirth, and there's no way to get to rebirth without death, but the death part is kind of swept under the rug, like, Good Friday. I grew up very casually going to church, but I'm not really, it's not my thing. But they sort of explained that dynamic, which is so completely emblematic of our whole Western situation. So that's kind of, that conversation is what eventually led to me writing this song.
Excellent.
This is Kris.
And I think this has accordion in it too, doesn't it, Julie? We're going to find out.
I hope so. Kris Delmhorst, Bobby Lee here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Late morning, midnight, sunny Tuesday gloom, silence under shutters, stillness in the room. Bobby Lee, this cave's too dark for me. I gotta go out where the wind can find my face. And I just hope that you'll see eventually that I was only trying to roll the stone away, roll the stone away. The years and the seasons, the tide and the breeze, come and bring their changes, so you call them all your enemies. Bobby Lee, I don't think I can breathe, and the walls get closer every single day. Yeah, it's true, I'm gonna leave. I just hope you can believe how hard I really tried to roll the stone away, roll that stone. Sorrow comes a knocking, but you won't let her inside. So she goes away with joy, her little sister. But she's looking back, and her tracks, a tear in her eye. And Bobby Lee, I believe it's killing me, and I got no other words that I can say. But I pray every night that someday you might find a way to roll that stone away. And Bobby Lee, you meant the world to me, and I miss you more than I could ever say. But I tried for so long, and no one is that strong. I think it's you who's got to roll that stone away, roll that stone, roll.
All right. Bobby Lee by Kris Delmhorst from her 2003 album Songs for a Hurricane, which we are revisiting today on the Back Catalog Listening Party with Kris Delmhorst and Julie Wolfe, who plays all over that record. And I think we determined accordion on that.
No,
Yes,
organ. That was organ.
Yep.
Yeah, Hammond organ.
Was an organ.
I don't think I didn't hear accordion on that one. I
It's
definitely
just,
heard.
I don't know.
There's probably just the mix-up of the instruments. Sometimes there's those weird, spooky third voices that pop up. But I did hear some fiddle. It sounded like was that you, Kris?
Yep, that was me sawing away.
Excellent, wonderful, and actually, it's funny because folks loving it, and Katie Dull said Bobby Lee's her favorite on the record. But the funny thing is that I feel like every track we've heard today, at least one, if not several people have said that's my favorite track.
That is true. That is true.
That's nice.
Yeah, so it's understandable, Kris, that you had trouble deciding which, because we make artists pick the record when we invite them to be on the show. They agree to be on the show, and then we say, okay, pick one of your old records, and then pick 5 songs. And she came back with 6 songs, and then we had to like narrow it down a little bit more. So
plus, I changed the record 3 times before we even got to this.
There's a lot of thought put into today's show.
I'm glad you picked this one.
Yeah. This is great.
This has been great. Yeah.
And one of the things that I love so much is that every track, and if folks out there buy the new record at buy this record at KrisDelmhorst.com, you'll find that the tracks really vary in terms of like kind of genre and style, but they really are threaded together so nicely that it really is an album in that way. You were talking about the narrative arc, but also musical arc too. And I feel like that's something really special, and it's hard to do when there's kind of so many different sounds on the album, and maybe that's due to having the same core band. But yeah, it's really really great. So if you think it's really great, I should mention there's a tip jar. You can throw something in Kris's tip jar through PayPal, and you can do that. Throw a little extra money in there. I mean, maybe what Redbird needs to have a new record is, to be able to
big fat tip,
right? So to fuel, so that it can get
how much do you want to hear, Redbird?
Exactly.
They also have a producer who's interested in working with them.
There you go.
All
it's
right.
all coming together.
Maybe this person right here. Maybe.
Well, like Ellen said, yeah, the tip jar is open, but so is her website with all the with this album and so many others.
So many others, including. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, by going there and purchasing some of this music, you're showing her how much you appreciate what she does, and Julie as well.
Exactly. And speaking of appreciation, we want to thank folks who support us through our Patreon on the Back Catalog Listening Party. If you're new to this show, we do this every week, and we've been doing it since March of 2020. Thanks to these folks who have continued to support the show, even though they can go out and do other things. Folks continue to show up here on the Back Catalog Listening Party, and we are so grateful to Penny, Ann, Alinda, Bevan, Connie, Vaughn, Alan, Chris, Alex, Becky, Galen, Peggy, Joe, Jim, Beverly, and John, Fred, Tim, Sarah, David, Jocelyn, Court, Matt, Steve, Mark, Homestead, Pick and Parlor, Severin, Lynn, Mary, Many Tracks, Nikki, Joni, David, Sarah C, and maybe you. If you want to join our Patreon, you'll get first look at who's coming up on the show. There's special after parties and live streams and all that jazz. So you can find out more about that by going to patreon.com/back catalog listening party. But have no fear, we have at least one more song to get to before today's show. So it's not over. The party is not over. And the last track that you picked to feature on today's show is Weather Vane. Is there anything you want to say about this one, Kris?
Well, what I want to make sure that I say, which is not about this song at all, but we got yapping and we ran out of time. But in case people aren't aware, I just want to let you know that Billy Conway, who produced this record and the one before, and then after he worked with me for years and years, and then he was my husband, Jeffrey Foucault's main road partner for the last 10 or 12 years as well, was also an incredible songwriter, which most people didn't know. And we lost Billy just over a year ago, last December 2021. And after that, a bunch of us got together at his house in New Hampshire and recorded an album of his songs, taking turns singing lead on them. And there's a bunch of people, Dana, who played on this, and Jabe, who played on Hurricane, and me, obviously. So we put together this record, tribute to Billy's songs. His songwriting is incredible, and all of us were so many people whose musical journey was so informed by him and his aesthetic and his approach to music. And so anyway, if you don't know about that record, please check it out. It's songsofbillyconway.com, and you'll like it.
Nice. And can folks get to it from your website too?
Yeah, they should be able to. Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
But look it up, Billy Conway. We'll make sure there's a link in our show notes. And one thing we should mention, if you are new to the show or you're just listening and aren't seeing what's happening on the screen here on YouTube, we actually archive all of our shows at backcatalog.listeningparty.com along with show notes. So it lists all the tracks we listen to, has any of the photos that the artists share, and also links to tangential projects. So we'll make sure that there's links to Julie and to Billy Conway and all these great folks. And yes, CJ Curtis there says R.I.P. Billy. He was a force.
For sure.
And Jeff asked Kris, we're going to get this question in right before we start this next song. Kris, am I wrong? You're a potter? Are you still making pottery?
I have been making pottery since the pandemic because I'm fidgety if I don't get to go on the road. And I have now a kitchen and a sun porch full of pottery that I have to get rid of. But I don't sell it online because I don't like mailing things in that. So yeah, come on by. I'll sell you some pots.
So if you're in Western Massachusetts, you can send Kris a message and you can maybe pick some up. Well, right now we're gonna take a listen to Weather Vane,
Yeah.
and if there's anything else we want to say about it, we can talk about it after. But let's
Okay,
give it a
perfect.
listen.
Okay.
All right, this is Kris Delmhorst, Weather Vane here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Oh, the tree lie down beneath you, the grasses bow and sway, the sands rise to meet you, and the ocean it makes way, and you move through your directions, and I turn my face away, the grasses lie beneath you, the ocean it makes way. I too can move the prairies, I too can move the sea, and I'm gonna take that motion, take it right inside me. I'm gonna rattle at your windows, rattle at your doors, rattle at your shutters, show you what they're for. No more weather vane, no more weather vane, no more weather vane. I'm gonna be the wind. No more weather vane, no more weather vane, no more weather vane, no more spin around, spin around, spin around, spin around, spin around, spin around. But you always face away and spin around, spin around, spin around, spin around, spin around, spin around. But you always, always, no more weather vane, no more weather vane, no more weather vane. I'm gonna be the wind, yeah, yeah. No more weather vane, no more weather vane, no more weather vane. I'm gonna be the wind, I'm gonna be the wind, ooh, yeah, I'm gonna be the wind, ooh, I'm gonna be the wind. Tree lie down beneath you, the grasses bow and sway, turn your face away. Sounds rise to meet through your direction, and the ocean is east.
Oh yeah, I love the with the whatever keys are happening on that.
I love that part, Julie.
What kind of keyboard were you playing on that
That's
one?
a Hammond B3.
Yeah,
That part, and then there was some Wurlitzer in there too.
yeah, lots of different layers in that song.
Spooky.
Yeah.
I know, I love how haunting that is. So good.
I was really appreciating Paul's mix on that listen. Just the way everything's sitting in the stereo field is really interesting and beautiful. And I love everyone has a little more room to like stretch out and let go and kind of play out and play a little, creatively in that one. And it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Billy is just laying it down.
Oh, yeah.
Simple, spare.
Yep.
But it just like grabs me by the throat and pulls me in. So beautiful.
Totally.
His touch on the drums.
Oh man.
Yeah, folks are loving it. And in fact, and Kris says, thank you all for a great show. We have loved the super rich and layered sounds in the tunes. Connie also echoes those thoughts. And I want to echo those thoughts.
Yeah.
What quick hour. What? That was
Yeah.
an
I know
hour?
what happened.
How did that
Let's
happen?
have some more hours.
I know. Well, you can listen to it over and over and over again if you purchase your own copy. Just head on over to krisdelmhorst.com and pick up a copy. Join our Patreon. Do the whole thing. You won't regret it.
And if you liked this show, good news is the good news, bad news. Good news, we do this every week, Tony and I, hosting the back catalog listening party. Bad news is it's not Kris and Julie every week, but we have tons of great artists, again, many of whom actually stopped by today's show, which was nice to see them.
Yeah.
But if you want to, if you like what you heard, like it on YouTube, give it the thumbs up, direct more bots to Kris and Julie, and also you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and find out who's coming up next week. And again, you can join our Patreon as well if you want to support the show in that way. But mainly, thank you for being here. Thanks to Kris and Julie for doing this, because if artists didn't say yes, then well, we wouldn't have a show, and we'd be much sadder every Friday at 4. And we want to thank all of you out there listening and joining the comments. What a robust conversation. I don't even know if we got to all the questions. So, but we hope that you'll join us again next week for another edition of the Back Catalog Listening Party. Such a treat. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you
Thank you guys so much. And thank you,
We
Julie,
really
for
appreciate
coming.
it.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Thanks for having me.
This was a lot
great.
of fun.
So
All right, well,
great.
we'll see you next week here on the Back Catalog Listening Party. Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, cheers.